Alrighty, so for the next hour, we're going to keep it packed. We're going to try to keep it as brief as possible, but there's lots of information to distill. The first step is going to be a welcome introduction from Chief Curran here with the fire department. And then we're going to get an overview of the whole CWPP process. And that'll be coming from Carol Rice with Wildland Resilience Management. After that, we're going to take a look at existing conditions in the area, as well as the hub site for the CWPP. And that'll come from Esther Mandino with Digital Mapping Solutions. After that, we'll do a quick activity, and then our time will be over, friends. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Monique, and thank you all for being here. So grateful for your participation in our first public meeting, and I'd like to recognize those that are joining us online as well. Thank you for joining us. A special thank you to Crosswalk Church for hosting us tonight. We really appreciate you lending us your space. That's very, very helpful for us. And I'd like to thank all our partner agencies, of course, RCD, who's running the meeting, Firewise, COED, and of course, I'd like to recognize we have CERT volunteers here, and of course, CAL FIRE, who funded this plan with the CAL FIRE mitigation grant. So we're thankful to them as well. I just wanted to share as just a welcoming statement some of the reasons why we're conducting this, why we're doing this effort, why we're coming up with a community wildfire protection plan. And so I want to share some of those reasons with you just as to introduce you to the concept. We want to look at a science-based analysis of the fire risk areas in and surrounding the city of Napa. Our partners in Napa County have already undergone this effort and have their own wildfire protection plan. And this plan is intended to fill the circle in the middle of that plan that is the city of Napa, including some of our outlying areas around Lake Tennessee and Milliken in our water treatment plant as well. So city-owned properties that are important for us as well. We also want to consider multiple planning efforts that we already have in place. So that includes our city's weed abatement program that we've had for a number of years. We want to integrate that into our planning efforts. Consideration for our existing fire access roads program. So we have a program that identifies multiple locations throughout the city where we have fire access for fire apparatus during an emergency event. We want to fold that into this plan as well. To consider community interest in new fire city councils to represent those living in the city of Napa. We also want to consider a structural protection plan to those in the wildland urban interface. So we have an effort in this plan to look at those areas, as well as the consideration of development, building, and construction standards for those that are living in those wildland urban interface areas. A big piece of our plan is consideration of public education and outreach related to wildfire protection and preparedness. This is one of the primary reasons for our plan is to bring resources to you, our community, about how you can be wildfire safe, and for those who are property owners to learn how to effectively protect their property from the risk of wildfire. And finally, as I mentioned, part of our planning effort is considering how our plan will work in cooperation and in tandem with Napa County, who has their own wildfire protection plan. And finally, we want to consider and coordinate with other relevant planning efforts that we have underway, including the City of Napa Urban Forestry Management Plan, which is also being organized by RCD. And so we're taking into account all of these existing planning efforts and sandwiching them together into one resource for our community as a city organization and for our community members as well. And again, we have, and you'll learn today about multiple opportunities about how you can stay informed and involved and how you can learn and gain more information about the community wildfire protection plan effort and how it matters to you and in your home, your property, and your community. And so with that, I'm very excited to continue on with the rest of the meeting. Again, thank you all for being here, and I'll turn the mic over to Carol.
What a great way to set the stage, Chief. Good afternoon. I'm Carol Rice with Wildland Resilience Management, supporting Napa RCD and the City of Napa in the creation of its first Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I will share with you why a Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP, is important and what all is involved in the planning process. Next slide, please. A CWPP is a collaborative document developed for community, and in this case, it's the city and its property even outside the city boundary in the wildland urban interface. It is a comprehensive and strategic plan that aims to reduce the risk of wildfire damage to people, property, natural, and cultural resources. The CWPP planning process promotes collaboration and facilitates community dialogues through engagement, a web presence, and documents that are a shared vision of how current and future activities reduce risk of wildfire. This is developed through a collaborative process led by a diverse stakeholder group, supported by the city, Napa RCV, and its consulting team. The creation and adoption of a CWPP is not mandatory. A CWPP does not mandate specific treatment projects for land management agencies and its private landowners. Instead, it assesses wildfire risk and protection needs, brings together wildfire management and suppression entities, and supports them in planning and implementation of mitigation measures. Having said that, having a CWPP is the gate opener because entities without one are filtered from having funding opportunities. So that's why we're excited that you're part of this process, and we're going forward with this. Next slide, please. You might find it interesting that what comprises the CWPP is actually based on federal law. It all started with the Forest Service doing what they thought was good work along the urban interface in their lands. But the communities at the forest edge wanted to be consulted and involved in the decision making. So Congress passed the 2003 Healthy Forest Restoration Act, and it required three things. One, collaboration. A CWPP must be collaboratively developed by local and state government representatives in consultation with federal agencies and other interested parties. Two, a CWPP must identify and prioritize areas for hazardous fuel reduction treatments and recommend types and methods of treatments that will protect one or more communities at risk and essential infrastructure. The thinking now is to go beyond hazardous fuel reduction treatments to reduce risk. This enables CWPPs to also address restoration of city parks or improve community wildfire preparedness. Three, a CWPP must recommend measures that homeowners and communities can take to reduce the ignitability of structures around the area that's addressed in the plan. The CWPP is also aimed at protecting essential infrastructure and enabling safe evacuation. So the CWPP and its products will cover the whole life cycle of wildland fire, from ignition prevention, pre-fire preparedness and vegetation treatments, wildfire detection and notification, wildfire response and community evacuation, and recovery after a wildfire. Next slide, please. Every CWPP follows 3 phases of planning. The first part of the process is to conduct assessments. We started with describing existing conditions through a community-based map, which hopefully displays the types of features that are important to the community and what affects wildland fire safety. A draft of this will be placed on the CWPP's website within the city's webpage. Using the base map and a variety of other data, the team will then assess the risks to the city and the city properties outside the city's boundaries, like Tennessee and areas beyond Milton Canyon. From this, we can see where the issues are and what causes those issues and suggest a suite of projects. During this time, we will also be gathering projects from you, the community. A CWPP must prioritize and identify first and then prioritize the hazards for fuel reduction treatments and recommend the types and methods that will protect the community and essential infrastructure. This will come a little later in the process. Through the CWPP planning cycle, the city will also identify the needs for community education, new policies and programs, and funding needs. Within the projects identified, a CWPP must recommend measures that homeowners and communities can take to reduce the ignitability of structures. Every CWPP will engage stakeholders and the public, which is what we're doing now. All interested parties are involved and welcome to be part of the planning process. Stakeholders represent organizations more than just themselves. Often stakeholders encompass public landowners or organizations that represent landowners, such as the vendors or grape growers or Napa Land Trust. Community organizations such as Napa Firewise, Fire City Councils, COED, CERT teams, and all sorts of community action organizations are welcome in this CWPP planning process. You, the public, are individuals who are interested in the problems and outcomes. You have an opportunity to have a say, which is why we're meeting with you today. In addition, a CWPP must be collaboratively developed with local and state representatives. These encompass the many crucial city functions such as planning, obviously the fire department, public works, water department, and parks department. The last phase of the CWP planning process is getting ready for action. The CWPP has to include an expression of priorities that will guide the next phase of the planning process, which is to develop an action plan. The action plan identifies the roles and responsibilities. I like to think of it as who works with who to get things done. The action plan is also where possible funding strategies are explored and prioritized as to where to spend existing city funds, and also to get buy-in from the projects identified. Community wildfire protection plans get updated, normally every 5 years, or if events trigger a rethinking of what's going on. Keeping the update schedule in mind, the planning process will want to figure out what you might want to do different next time. And that comes through monitoring and adaptation. All along, the team will be writing up this plan, and next year, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan will be shepherding the actual document through the approval process. Next slide. And we covered that. Go ahead. And what do we get out of a CWPP? An important outcome is reaching a common understanding of existing conditions through both a community-based map and a risk assessment. Simply put, the CWPP will identify the potentials for fire, what to protect, and how to reduce risk. The CWPP will also reference and sync up those other local planning documents, such as the safety element, the general plan, the urban forest management plan, the city's new local hazard mitigation plan, or programs already existing in the city. In this way, the CWPP can leverage these ongoing efforts to amplify the effectiveness of each. Because each CWPP has to prioritize its projects, it actually is an open statement of the community's priorities. And in the end, the partners learn about each other's missions, their needs and wishes, which results in more collaboration aimed at action. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Esther Mantino to talk about community basement.
Thank you, Carol, and hello, everyone. My name is Esther Mantino. Today, I'm going to quickly review some of the maps we're sharing online, as well as some of the tools we have that allow you to explore our data. I'll go over how the data will be presented, how we can use the site to gather information from you, and later on in this process, the hub site may also have data products that summarize your input and may have information about implementation of those projects identified in the CWPP process. Next slide. So we'll start at the City of Napa CWPP's hub site, which you can access from the CWPP main website, which is on the screen right now. Or you can also access it directly through your URL, which is also on that site. Once there, you can read through our text that explains the hub site, and scrolling down, you'll see the image of our CWPP interest form. This is the same form that's available on the main website. If you click on it, you can enter your information to get on our email mailing list. If you continue scrolling, you come to the map gallery. At the moment, there's only 4 image cards in the map gallery. They include the community-based map, that's the first one. It's in the form of a story map. A copy of that community-based map is in Spanish. And then the next one is the online mapping tool that's called the Explore the Data. And another online mapping tool called the Find Your Evac Zone. Clicking on any of these will open up a new tab. So we're going to start with the community base map. And once you click on it, that in charge, it'll open up a story map that's called, guess what? The community base map. So again, you just scroll down till you get to the map container. This map container is just a series of thematic maps that you can scroll through by clicking on the arrow to the right. All the maps are interactive, which means you can zoom in and out using the plus and minus buttons on the bottom right of the screen. You can also search for your address. There's a search box on the left top side of the screen. In addition, on the right of each map is a text box that explains what is on the map and also lists the data sources for each map. So this first map shows the CWPP's area of interest. It's shown in blue and includes the entire city of Napa, 2 small outlying properties south of the city, as well as parcels surrounding Lake Hennessy and the Milliken Reservoir. If you click on the arrow pointing to the right, in the middle of the right side of the screen, the map will change to the terrain, watersheds, and roads map. It'll come. In addition to all the map tools available in the first map, you now have a legend located on the left side of the map. You can click on the little X at the top right of this legend to minimize it. For some maps, including this one, if you zoom in, more layers of data will become available. You can click on most of the features to get more information regarding those features. For example, by clicking to the left of the city of Napa, a watershed will be highlighted in cyan, and a pop-up box will appear with information regarding that watershed. The next map shows vegetation. It's coming. There it goes. Then we have a map showing public ownership, fire history, CAL FIRE's fire and hazard severity zones, community assets, which is an important one, City of Napa's council districts, fire city councils established and proposed within Napa County, and founding and evacuation zones map that is provided for reference only. Once you're done exploring the community-based map, you can return back to the hub site by clicking on the City of Napa CWPP title at the very top left corner of the screen, of any screen that pops up. And once there, you can scroll back down to the map gallery and click on the Explore the Data image chart. And what we're looking at here is the web mapping application. So it contains all the layers that we just saw in the community-based map, but they're all on a single map. And like all the maps, this is interactive. You can zoom in and out. You can click on the features to get more information, and more importantly, you can turn on and off layers here. So there's a legend button at the top left side of the screen that will show you the legend. And there's also the layer list button immediately below that will allow you to turn on and off layers. In addition, at the bottom of the screen is a small tab you can use to directly view the tablet data for any of the data layers shown on the map. Once you have explored the data on this map, and the reason why we're doing this is so that you can let us know if there's anything missing that you want to add to it. But once you're done with that, you can go back to the City of Napa's, go back to the hub site. And also in the map gallery, you'll see another web map application where you can find your evacuation zone if you don't already know it. And it's really easy to use. You just like with the Explore the Data map, web map application, it's interactive. You can click anywhere on the map to get more information about your zone, or you can enter in your address and it'll tell you what evacuation zone is nearest to your address. Okay, so once you're done with that, you can go back to the hub site and continue scrolling down past the map gallery. And you'll come to a short list of videos that we have compiled as a resource for you. And then finally, at the bottom of the hub site, you'll find the logos and links to our partnering agencies, which include the Napa Valley's community organizations active in disaster, CAL FIRE, Napa RCD, Napa Firewise, and the California Climate Investments. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks Esther for that great overview of existing conditions in the hub site. And now for an activity. So next slide, please. Okay, so for this activity, I would love if we could all imagine we are going for a mile-long walk right around your neighborhood. Okay, and as you're thinking about that walk, I want you to consider what are the resources that make your community so special? Is it a daycare? Is it a church? Is it a market? Is it your grandma's house? Any of these things are valid, and I would love for us to kind of pick apart what it is that brightens our day on that walk, okay? And after you've thought that through, I want you to brainstorm with 2 or 3 folks around you to address the following questions. There are going to be 3, and if possible, please separate them out using different colored Post-it notes on your table. There are a few, there's some pens, so we should have all the materials that we need. The 3 questions are going to be, what are the resources that you find valuable in your community? And who would be impacted if those resources were lost due to damages from wildfire, okay? The second question is gonna be, what role do you see yourself playing in a fire-adapted community to protect those resources? And then the third is gonna be, what challenges do you face with current preparedness efforts? Alrighty, folks, so we have a few minutes to brainstorm. I know some of you are still working on your questions, and that's totally okay. We'll have time after the meeting as well to keep filling those out. We'll chat more. But for now, that we have you all gathered here, we're wondering, like, where are we going, right? We have this meeting, we learned the basic information. What are our next steps? For that, I'm gonna pass it over to Carol.
So I'm going to refer to you these boxes in here, and we'll walk you through it. The first one is to gather interested parties, and we've gathered a bunch of stakeholders. There are more than 72 stakeholders in our organization, different stakeholder groups. So we have pretty robust stakeholder groups. We are now at public meeting number 1, and we're excited to have this public meeting number 1. But I also want to remind you and hope that you can share the word that we're going to have a public meeting number 1 again next week in Spanish. So do tell your friends that are Spanish speakers that we will be presenting exactly the same information for them next week. The date is the 17th. Same time, same place here. So that's public meeting number 1. And then the next step is to conduct a risk assessment. We're going to use all that great data that Esther went through in the community-based map and create a risk assessment to find out where are the hazards and where are the values of risk, and that will lead to the developing a suite of projects. But before we actually develop a suite of projects, we're going to have a public meeting number 2, which will be in the form of a family-friendly fair. And that will happen probably on a weekend, probably later in the fall when it's a little bit cooler. And we'll have hopefully a different group of folks to reach out for public meeting number 2. And with that public meeting number 2, we're going to ask the public at that time, we have this existing conditions. Did we miss anything? What would you change about that? And this is how we think of our hazards and risks. What would you change? What would you add? Those are the kinds of feedback that we'd be asking at that point. So with that input and the base map and the risk assessment, we will be developing a suite of projects. And then we'll be developing the who does what with whom to get stuff done, which is our action plan. And then we come up with public meeting number 3, again, to touch bases with you all and say, did we get it right? What would you add? It's not too late. Add something down. And then at that point, we start with the prioritization project process. And then, we have a draft at that point, because you actually have to have not only these cool maps and the recordings of the meetings, you have to have a document for someone to sign. And so we will be developing that document and sending it around, next year sometime. And then, the last bit is to obtain signatures from the CWPP. By the way, the signatures have to include an elected official, a representative from the fire department, probably the chief, and elected, and CAL FIRE unit chief, and I think that's it. So always an elected official, always a member of the community as well, representing the community. So those are the next steps, if you will. And I will pass it over to Chief Curran to tell us, wrap up, and maybe open the floor for questions after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Before we wrap up, I guess I can ask if there are any questions that you have. I'll also share that as soon as we wrap up, we'll still be here. We'll be milling around. So if you do have individual questions for any one of us, please feel free to come up and ask any of that. So that being said, are there any questions for the group that you have? Okay, I don't think so. Hopefully that means we gave you a lot of great information. Just to wrap up the official part of our meeting tonight, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and participating. This is a really important effort. And our community in general, we know, is concerned with the wildfire threat. And so as we participate in this, and I just want to reiterate how important it is that we get as much community input as possible into the plan. This is your community wildfire protection plan. So we want it to be as thorough and in-depth and as successful as possible for you all as a community so that you can be wildfire safe and prepared as well. So I think we do have a question rising. Yes.
I have a question in reference to, we have more than wildfire features here. We've had years of flooding, we've had years of earthquakes, and various dangers and areas of how much we said it kind of becomes an item itself during flooding. So are some of these plans somewhat interactive or interchangeable to those things as well?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll repeat the question for those that are listening online to our meeting today. The question was related to all disasters that we face here in our Napa community, not just wildfire. And the question was, do those plans interact with each other? And they certainly do. A little earlier on in the meeting, we mentioned some of those efforts. That our local hazard mitigation plan, the City of Napa has one. Napa County currently is undergoing an update to their hazard mitigation plan. And that is the plan that looks at all of those various different types of hazards, everything from water-related hazards, flooding, wildfire, debris flow, weather-related, heat-related events are all included in the hazard mitigation plan. And so these plans really do work in cooperation with one another. And this one just is focused now, the purpose of this plan is on the wildfire threat, but that's a piece, of course, of that overall related plan. So, yes, please.
So often what happens in the CWPP is that we will identify cool projects that have not yet been thought of in the local hazard mitigation plan. So the next time it's updated, they're going to incorporate the new projects into the CWPP. And then the next time the local hazard mitigation plan comes up, they're going to have some great new projects that we will not have thought of, and it will be incorporated into the next CWPP. So it just gets, because they interact, they get better and better.
Thank you, Carol. And that's also one of the reasons, just for our community knowledge, is why we keep those plans updated. And generally, we update and look at those plans every 5 years, is because we know things change. And the threats and the risks that we face as a community might have changed during that 5-year period. And so that's one of the reasons why we regularly update. So thank you for that question. Yes.
So I heard a family-friendly events would be the next public meeting. When would that be?
Yes, thank you for asking. So the question is in reference to what we shared as far as our family-friendly event or fire fair. That likely will be in the end of September or in the first half of October. So we're looking and ironing out those dates. All of that information will be publicly shared via social media, on the Hub site, and on the City of Napa website as well.
Could I suggest that, that you include the schools in that process, because they're great, the kids will get the parents. And that's how that works. And so, if you want folks to attend, you can get into the schools, especially elementary schools, early, school starts, and push that out through those neighborhood schools in the area. You'll get a lot more attention.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll repeat that just for the folks that are listening in online. The suggestion is to leverage the kids to get their parents there, and so to utilize the school messaging system to get that out. We're going to have another microphone if there's any more questions, so that we can, just for the benefit of the folks online. Any other questions from the board?
We can bring our goats.
Kids love the goats. We had the goats at our fire department open house this last year, and it's true. That was a big draw, so thank you. Okay, well, again, we'll be here still for a little bit if there's any individual questions for any of us. We really appreciate your participation in our meeting tonight. Thank you also again to those that are participating online. The meeting is also being recorded and the video will be made available on the website. So as you share what happened tonight and the information, please advertise for us and help get people involved in this important planning effort. So again, we're having next week a meeting in Spanish. That will be a repeat of tonight's meeting for our Spanish-speaking community will be next week. That's all part of meeting number 1, and then meeting number 2, as we referenced, will be later in the fall when we have our fire fair. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your participation, coming out, and we'll be here visiting with you for a little bit if you have any questions. Thank you.